Hello everyone, let's go. We're going to quickly talk about the Engineers Reuse Collective, but also mainly see if we can think differently. So the Engineers Reuse Collective, it was set up about a year ago from actually a group of friends who, for working for different engineering practices, who said we should get together, we should talk and collaborate and share information so that we can reuse more. And this has now grown into, quite a decent organisation trying to increase reuse in the built environment. These are our sort of aims. So implementing it and sharing information amongst ourselves and things, demonstrating that we can do it, sharing knowledge that what works and in some ways what hasn't worked, so we can learn from that. We champion it, so we'll say you should be reusing more, please get on and do it. And advocate, I suppose that's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah. We need to be doing more. So this is a sort of summary of what we are, a collective of minds focused on positive action and empowerment. And just this is the corporate members that we have, so a lot of excellent practices there. Currently slightly annoying because there's 33, so it doesn't fit very neatly on a slide. So if we can get up to 40, that would be great. It would fit much better for me. Anyway, right. So let's talk about change. So this is a diagram of how I perceive change happens in different forms. So we have here established methods, the way we've always done things. Works, it's all right, stuff happens. We have technological advances which come along and they make some changes happen. So often the overlap between technological advances and established methods, we get productivity gains, we get to do things a bit more efficiently and so on. And a third thing I'm going to throw in the mix is new ideas, and that is particularly you lot. New, younger people coming into the industry with new ideas and how we can change and do things differently. Combine them with established methods and you get, let's say, incremental change, things move on. With new ideas and technological advances, you get innovation. But the key part of all of this is the three coming together to get transformational change, and that's what we want. We can't just be sitting with our established methods and our technological advances. We need new ideas. So, little illustration. 1960, lovely telephone with a rotary dial. I remember these. And construction, frames, cranes, stuff like that. 1980, 20 years later, we've moved on. We've got push buttons, but we've still got cranes, scaffolding, building the same sort of way. Anyone remember these? We might get into the...
Best friend of all time, that one.
That's, yeah. I can't remember what it was. I had one of them.
3310.
3310. But construction is still very similar, and there we are 20 years later. So the point here is that industry we're in, construction, I know there have been technological changes in the way we design things and so on, but in some ways the way we think hasn't really changed. If you look at phones, it's a dramatic change, and it's come along and changed the way that we communicate. So, now, should we end demolition? No more destructive demolition. And I'm going to put here a thought experiment. So what would you do if there are no new raw materials to be able to use? How are you going to design using everything that only what we've got already? We've built a lot over the last 50, 100 years. Do we need any new stuff? Can we just repurpose what we've already got? So it's an interesting thing to think about, I think. So I'm now going to hand over to Anna, who's not going to answer that, I think.
Well, we'll try. In the Engineers Reuse Collective, we've started thinking about some of these things and how we might need to approach things a little bit differently. So you might have seen these types of diagrams before. This diagram is for a concrete framed building, and it's demonstrating all the materials that were coming out of that building and what you might be able to do with them. So you can see it's got concrete, steel, aluminium, glass, and then other materials at the bottom. So if we just focus on the structural materials that we have, which is the concrete and the steel, and we start having a look at what we might be able to do with them. If you look at these things really early on in your project, when you first start looking at an existing building, then actually the scope for what you might be able to do with those materials is so much more. So this is a diagram that somebody did really early on in a project when they had just come to this building to say, what have we got here and what could we do with it? And how can we make sure that we get the most out of it? So you can see in here they've said the kind of brown strip at the top, that's their concrete foundations. So we can keep those and we can reuse those really easily. And then in the middle they've looked at other materials that are coming out and the ways that you might be able to reuse those back in. Now actually from the steel, there's not very much that goes into that, and that's mostly because this is a concrete building and the steel work in it is reinforcement predominantly. And it's very difficult to get reinforcement out and reuse it. But for steel, we pretty much recycle everything that comes out at the moment. But how can we get more of these things that are being recycled and being wasted back up to the top? And if we think about this in terms of this hierarchy of net zero, which hopefully you've all seen, this is a diagram produced by the Institution of Structural Engineers. What we ideally want to do is not build anything, but that's perhaps not the most practical thing for us as engineers. But after that, what can we do to minimize the amount of stuff that we are using? And this is always the thing that we want to be coming back to. How can we use less stuff? So if we think about that in terms of materials, then this is a diagram that Andy has produced, the Engineers Reuse Collective has produced, to try and demonstrate what we ideally want to be doing and how that impacts what energy we use and what waste we produce. So if we retain existing buildings as they are, you can see they come across the top, we don't have any waste and we don't need any more energy to achieve that. And the lower down this diagram that you get, the more waste that you have coming out of the building and the more energy that you need to create your new building. So the higher that we can get everything in this diagram, the better. The more we can retain, the more that we can repair what's already there, the better it is. And then after that, if we can reuse those materials, then again, we're reducing the amount of waste and we are reducing the amount of energy required to produce our new building. So what ways do we have of doing that already? Well, steelwork is reasonably far along in terms of reuse. We've got some quite good guidance. We've got quite a lot of example projects of where that's being done. And now we just need to keep going. We need to push that a little bit harder. And that's one of the main things that we're trying to do at the moment in the Engineers Reuse Collective. We're all from different engineering practices and having a little go at this, and we're trying to share all of those lessons learned so that we're not each individually making the same mistakes that somebody else has made, and that we can hopefully move forward a bit quicker. Timber, this is some timber beams that have been made from CLT sections. I think, is that right? No, the glulam sections made from recycled joists. Which again, this is a little bit more experimental. Reuse of timber is a bit more tricky at the moment, but there are some new ideas of how you might be able to do something different. This picture on the right is the Euston Tower project, where there is some concrete sections that are being cut out with the hope that they can be reused in a similar way to a precast plank. In the middle at the bottom is a it's kind of a little test bridge, but it's made from pieces of recycled concrete that are then post-tensioned to create this arch. And then at the bottom left is some masonry panels where instead of taking the masonry apart, they cut out panels and reused a whole panel onto the facade of a building. And then if we think about that in terms of a whole building, this picture on the left is the project that I'm working on New Bond Street. But here we've looked at really unusual ways of approaching the building to try and keep as much of it as we can, which includes some really unusual things like jacking up floors and jacking up parts of the facade. This in the top right is another project where they also jacked floor plates, I think for 2 floors, to be able to keep that whole floor plate exactly as it is, but to be able to achieve the aims of that building. And at the bottom here is a project, the Mary Ward Centre, where they completely kept the whole frame and demonstrated that you could do that and you could make it work for the new building. So what are we saying to you? Well, the main thing that we're saying is that it's time to start thinking about things in a different way. But you guys have all got really good ideas. So take those ideas and suggest them, because you all have learnt completely different things to what we learnt when we were students. You have a totally different knowledge set. So bring that and be positive about it and suggest new things when you have got ideas. Think creatively. There are lots of different ways that we can approach buildings. There are different ways that we can approach materials. So suggest those things. Be creative. What ideas do you have? Think curiously. Question the things that you're doing. Question the things that other people are suggesting you're doing. If you think maybe that's not the right thing to do, ask the question, why are we doing this? What could we do differently? Think differently. Yeah, I think really questioning the things that you're doing and why you're doing them, and whether there is a different way of doing them that might be different, that might be better, is what we're suggesting is the best approach. And lastly, just think. There are lots of things that we do in the construction industry because it's the way we've always done them, but it doesn't have to be. We can question those things, we can think a little bit harder, and we can do something a little bit better.